Hollywood loves remakes. Not good ones, mind you. No, Hollywood loves remaking movies that are already great, already beloved, and already perfectly fine. They look at a classic and say, yes, but what if we made it worse? Meanwhile, there's a treasure trove of movies that actually could benefit from a second chance. Films that had the ideas, the spark, the potential, but lacked the budget, the effects, or, let's be honest, any form of modern filmmaking competence. In this video, we're fixing Hollywood's homework. These are 5 movies that genuinely deserve remakes. Not because the originals were bad necessarily, but because the concepts were begging to be fully realized. Hey everyone, welcome back. So with Hollywood's latest remake of a classic 80s movie, The Running Man, currently in cinemas, it got me thinking that considering Hollywood is so obsessed with remaking, rebooting, or reimagining everything in their back catalogue, why don't they remake movies that deserve, or dare I say it, demand a remake? Hollywood has always tended to be risk averse, but that's never been the case more than it has been for the last decade or so. While original low budget and independent horror movies continue to be made, pretty much all the high budget tentpole films seem to be a remake, reboot, requel, sequel, or interquel. And if it's not any of those things, it seems to be always based on an existing IP, like a superhero property, video game, or book. Gone are the days when studios took chances. The only reason the likes of decade-old properties like Star Wars or Star Trek exist is because their creators were true creative visionaries who had an idea and a studio that was willing to take a chance. It's hard to imagine now, but George Lucas, even coming off the success of his film American Graffiti, struggled to get a studio to greenlight Star Wars. Science fiction was seen as expensive to make, and not that popular. But 20th Century Fox studio head at the time, Alan Ladd Jr., saw the potential, took a chance on Lucas, and the result, of course, was the most popular franchise in entertainment history. Well, at least it was, until Disney got their hands on it. We see time and time again how perfectly great movies like Psycho, Total Recall, RoboCop, and Ghostbusters, pretty much all of Disney's back catalogue, are being remade to less than stellar success. But Hollywood keeps doing it anyway. And guess what? There are even more on the way, with the likes of a gender-swapped American Psycho, and yet another version of Frankenstein. Didn't we just get another one of those? These remakes are more often than not pointless, as they have absolutely nothing new to say, other than be a cheap cash grab. The likes of RoboCop and Total Recall in particular seem to be more family-friendly versions of these classics, removing all the grit and violence that was part of their appeal in the first place. So the question remains, why not just remake bad films? Or at the very least, films that may have had a good original idea at their core, but for one reason or another, whether it was the lack of budget, technological limitations, studio meddling, or the lack of the right creative talent involved, the results were less than stellar. However, I thought it'd be fun to point out my top 5 films in particular that not only could benefit from a remake, but it's essential that they do it, and could prove to be very successful, creatively as well as commercially. Let's start with The Last Starfighter, a film that was genuinely ahead of its time, but also looked like it was animated by someone's uncle who had just discovered computers. Now, the premise is fantastic. A young man stuck in a dead-end trailer park suddenly becomes humanity's last hope because he mastered an arcade game. The game, as it turned out, was a test simulation by a benevolent alien named Centauri to help him find the best warrior to save his people, the Ryland Star League, against the evil Kodan Armada. It's the original Gamer Saves the Galaxy story. Before Ready Player One, before Ender's Game, before every Twitch streamer thought they were Neo. Now, I like Last Starfighter. It has that early 80s sense of adventure and wonder, with a great cast, good humour, and a very sweet sense of optimism. However, even by early 80s standards, the visual effects leave a lot to be desired. This was one of the first movies, like Tron, which came out 2 years earlier, to extensively use computer-generated images in place of more traditional techniques like models and miniatures. Now, you can't fault the movie's ambition. I realize for its time it was very groundbreaking, but unlike Tron, it was never supposed to look this fake. And it's always been one of the reasons this film has never been a particular favourite of mine. I think a modern remake would really fit into today's world. Not only would the effects be miles better with today's techniques, but it could really tap into the gaming culture, which is so prevalent today. I think a remake has potential to be a massive blockbuster, because it could successfully bridge the gaming audience with the movie audience. Remember, the video game industry is way more lucrative than the movie industry. The movie industry is struggling, but games have never been more popular. Also, a modern remake could really expand the lore that was only hinted at in the original. It suffers, in my opinion, in the same way that the Green Lantern movie did over a decade ago, in that it kept cutting back and forth between what was going on in space to the trailer park on Earth with a pointless comedy subplot. A remake could really tap into the idea of the militarization of virtual reality and video game technology. The drones that are used in today's warfare were originally based on Xbox. The men and women who pilot these drones are living a real-life video game every single day, except that the game is real. So yeah, sign me up for a remake of The Last Starfighter, Battle Beyond the Stars. Sticking with the space opera theme, 1980's Battle Beyond the Stars is a movie crying out for the remake treatment, to the point that I'm surprised that they actually haven't done so already. Battle Beyond the Stars is set far off in a distant galaxy, as the peaceful world of Akir is threatened by the evil Sador, leader of the Malmori Empire, and his massive warship. After being given about a week to surrender, the young, not at all inspired by Luke Skywalker, Shad, sets off in his ship to find warriors to fight for Akir. So this movie was basically a science fiction version of the 1960 classic western The Magnificent Seven, which in itself was a remake of Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai. Both movies star Robert Vaughn, where he essentially played the same character. Battle also launched the career of composer James Horner, who went on to score a few Star Trek movies, and many more classic films. It also had some young guy named James Cameron doing a lot of the visual effects. Wonder what became of him. I've always enjoyed Battle Beyond the Stars. Despite its low budget, it's a fun space adventure, and it's far better than the cheap Star Wars knockoff it's often accused of being. Like The Last Starfighter, there's a sense of optimism and fun about the movie. It's also far more suggestive than its reputation as a silly kids movie. Shad's spaceship seems to be designed after certain parts of the female anatomy. And how the hell did Sybil Denning manage to squeeze herself into that suit? Battle, like Last Starfighter, could really benefit from a modern day upgrade. Obviously the special effects would look a lot better, but I think a new version could really expand on the personalities of the mercenaries. And I think that the movie could do that in a 2-hour runtime, unlike Zack Snyder's 2 Rebel Moon movies. Ah yes, Rebel Moon, where Zack Snyder spent over 2 hours of screen time just to assemble his mercenaries and save the character development for the second movie. Battle managed to do that in less than half the time, and we cared about them through smart writing and the charming performances of the cast. A new version could expand on this though, and give them more time to interact with each other during the final battle. Robert Vaughn's character nearly dies off screen. I'd love to see what someone like Austin Butler would do with that kind of character. Like I said with Last Starfighter, a new Battle Beyond the Stars could expand the lore of this universe that you only got a glimpse of in the original film, and could set up several spin-offs. Finally, a new battle could really lean into its Seven Samurai roots, with the thematic exploration of heroism and sacrifice. Maniac Cop. With all the modern remakes of classic horror movies like The Omen, The Hitcher, and Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm amazed Hollywood hasn't gotten round to Maniac Cop yet. The original Maniac Cop from 1988 is a slasher movie about a police officer who is murdered after being sent to jail, subsequently returns from the dead, and goes on a killing spree. The movie was very low budget and is extremely cheesy, but it's good fun with a few good scares and some great kills. While it has a cult following, it's not so hallowed that a modern remake wouldn't be a bad idea, and could improve on its core concept with a bigger budget and better creative team. A modern Maniac Cop would not only have better production values, but could have a lot to say about the themes of corruption, police accountability, and public trust through nuanced storytelling that was only briefly touched on in the original. The Maniac Cop himself, Cordell, we don't really get to understand him as we never really see what he was like pre-transformation, only during a brief flashback. A modern version could take more time in us getting to know him before he's killed, add a tragic human backstory, and add psychological layers that would make him more than just a Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers clone. Also, in today's social media driven climate, it would seem inevitable that the killer would inspire copycats, racism debates, but also showcase an equal balance how some police can overstep their boundaries, but also how others would stop at nothing to uphold the law. Obviously, a modern Maniac Cop has potential to be very controversial, particularly in the likes of the Rodney King and George Floyd killings. But I think controversy can be a good thing, inspire healthy debate, and make Maniac Cop more than just another slasher flick. The Shadow. I guess we have to have at least one superhero movie on here. The Shadow, released in 1994 and starring Alec Baldwin as a titular hero, was a story about an evil drug kingpin named Lamont Cranston, who turns good when he trains with an ancient tribe to develop telekinetic abilities, and returns to New York City to live a dual life as a wealthy playboy, but at night fights crime as the Shadow. Now, if that sounds very similar to Batman, it pretty much is, except for the fact that the Shadow actually predates Batman in comics history. The Shadow was first published in 1931, 7 years before Batman's first appearance in DC Comics. The movie adaptation from 1994 has a lot to like about it, and showed great potential. Alec Baldwin was well cast as a Shadow, and actually could have made a good Batman back in the day. The supporting cast is good, production design of 1930s New York is impressive, and the musical score by Jerry Goldsmith is spectacular. However, there are several areas which made the film fail for me. The script is just not good, with several lines of dialogue that would embarrass the writer of Batman and Robin.
Next time you get to be on top.
The villain isn't particularly memorable, but the main problem is the inconsistent tone. The movie veers between psychological horror and 60s Batman camp, and can't decide which way it wants to go. Also, the action sequences are fairly weak, despite some pretty good effects for the time. Having said that, you can see how this movie at least partly influenced Batman Begins over 10 years later, especially in the fact that both Lamont Cranston and Bruce Wayne are taught to use fear as a weapon and a disguise. Their respective villains are also part of the same group they trained with. A modern-day remake could revamp the visual effects for the Shadow's psychic powers, invisibility, and mind control to achieve seamless, eerie realism with current technology. It could strengthen the pulp noir atmosphere by deepening the 1930s New York setting with authentic period details, shadowy aesthetics, and moral grey areas. It could improve pacing and narrative coherence by streamlining the plot, reducing the campy elements, and focusing more on the psychological thriller aspects. They need to cast a charismatic lead with gravitas to embody the dual role of Cranston and the Shadow. I'm thinking Austin Butler again. Also, a remake could explore the themes of vigilantism, redemption, and urban decay in a way that resonates with today's discussions on justice and power. But most importantly, the script has to be a lot better than the original, and the tone should go for a more psychological thriller tone, and focus only on the Shadow. No setting up a cinematic universe. You hear that, James Gunn? And finally, we need to remake Brokeback Mountain, but this time with two beautiful women. Yes, hear me out. I'm very serious. Stop laughing. This is art. Before the comments explode, yes, I'm aware the original is a heartbreaking queer male story about two cowboys who fall in love in the Old West. I'm going to be honest with you people. I have never actually seen Brokeback Mountain, I've always seen the trailer and that was enough for me. I'm sure Heath Ledger, may he rest in peace, and Jake Gyllenhaal gave great performances, but I just don't watch gay stuff. But it's amazing to me that despite all the gender swap remakes we've gotten over the last decade or so, like Ghostbusters 2016 and The Hustle, this is a remake I can guarantee every heterosexual male and quite a few females would want to see, especially if they cast Sydney Sweeney and Ana de Armas in the lead roles. Yes, I'm aware this would be shameless Oscar bait pandering to the male gaze, the female gaze, and whatever gaze TikTok has on any given Tuesday. That's the point. Look, if straight men got Magic Mike and Magic Mike XXL, two entire films that exist solely because Channing Tatum can move his pelvis, then women, queer women, and men of taste deserve their own culturally significant thirst object disguised as prestige drama. Just picture the scene. Sydney Sweeney in a flannel shirt that's 2 sizes too small, staring mournfully at sheep. Ana de Armas leaning against the fence, cigarette dangling, whispering, "I wish I knew how to quit you," in that exotic accent. Seriously, do I really need to sell this anymore? This would be a guaranteed billion-dollar movie for sure. So come on, Hollywood, give us the remake that everyone wants. It may just actually save cinema. And look at how poor the box office has been doing this year. Cinema does really need saving. So anyway, what do you all think? What are your ideas for remakes that Hollywood should remake? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Share this video out there, and you can watch more videos here right now. Until next time, take it easy.